What's up, y'all? Today we have a graphic that I'm going to break down that has a lot of different cool elements. We're going to be talking about some typography stuff and just like ways to make statistics graphics interesting visually and cool, as well as just lighting and shading and some other things. So we're going to start off here with a yellow background, put a gradient overlay on that. Then we have a texture. I just set that to screen. That's what it looks like normally. And then double click on the layer and drag the sliders out. That affects that layer. Then we have another very subtle texture that's on the background. That's only a 10% fill. And then we have the floor. And so as you can see, that's set to screen and I have that brushed out except for in the front. So I just put a layer mask on it and just kind of brushed around here. And so it just kind of looks like the ground that's like fading off into the background. So we have our cutout here. I think in the photo, actually, it was a very nice up close photo, but his head, the top of his head was cropped off. So I had to find a way to adjust for that. I used an inner shadow on him that is yellow and really brought that out on the left side. So you can see it's coming from the bottom left. Here are the settings for that. Color dodge yellow. And just makes it look like it's fitting in with the background here. Then we just used some hue saturations to adjust the color. This one I put on colorize and then turn it to yellow and just brush it in so it looks like it's faded in from this side, like this color right here. This one was just some little details like on his nose and lips and stuff that I was brushing in to show the yellow lighting. And then I just did it again on some other areas. So all those are set to screen and then just brushed in certain areas where I think the light would be hitting him correctly. A lot of times I don't go that in depth with the lighting, but sometimes it's really good to, especially if you have a high detail shot like this one. So then we have our two stars that we added in, two blank squares or rectangles to put his name over top of. These I have a bevel on and a gradient overlay just to give them some depth and like that 3D look. More rectangles up here where we're gonna put the statistics. Then I just put his name over top of those rectangles and also gave them a gradient overlay and a bevel so that they look 3D as well. I'll show you the settings for that because I like to do that sometimes. It's a pretty good, as long as you don't go too far with 3D in Photoshop, it can look pretty good. Like I feel like this looks decent. Sometimes it doesn't, but these are the settings for that bevel, and then it's just a simple gradient overlay. I have stars next to force fumbles. So we have a statistics, and what you want to do with statistics graphics is find ways to make it look interesting visually. So maybe like showing what the stat is somehow with like a logo or an emblem. In this case, didn't really have the time to do something that showed force fumbles. So what we decided to do, instead of just writing 2 force fumbles and then having to do that with a bunch of stats and then it ended up looking like a bunch of cluttery text, I just added 2 stars and then put that next to force fumbles, and then that just shows visually the number associated with the stat. So I did the same thing with stars here. So there's like a half a star as well. And these are tackles for loss, if you don't know what TFLS means. And all of these I have that bevel effect on. All the text I wanted to look the same for the most part. I think it's good to do that. It doesn't always have to be like that, but usually good idea to match the text. Even here, so find ways to just like make it not just like writing out 37 QB pressures. So we have like our big 37. That's like what's going to catch the eye. That's where the eye's going to go first. And then you have the little descriptor down here. That's another technique, is just using bigger numbers. That's what catches the eye. When people see that, it's very easy to see. You know, you first look at the graphic, you see his face, you see these big numbers, and then you wonder, what are these big numbers meaning? Oh, okay, here's the descriptive text to show you. And then you go down here and you're like, what are all these stars? And then you have the descriptive text. Also wanted to balance out the graphic, and I thought that happened well. I did have another like cutout over here, but this is like a moment where you can make sure you're not putting too much in a graphic. If you don't have the space for 3 cutouts, even if you've already cut out like 3 players, then just don't have all 3 cutouts. So I had some more stuff to go over here, but because I wanted the statistics to stand out and have enough room and really pop, I decided to have that take up this area, big cutout over here and the smaller cutout here. I think that all worked well, and then that's his position and where he's from. And then on his smaller cutout, have an inner shadow effect, and I'll show you the details there. So pretty simple. You've seen all this stuff before if you've watched any of my videos. Then I put an exposure layer on him to darken up the top of his cutout and then brighten up his feet, and then a hue saturation layer set to colorize. This is the color I set it to, basically yellow. That's brushed onto the bottom of him. So like this is where the light is. He's kind of backlit and lit from the ground. So that's where the light's coming from. He'd be darker up top and lighter down low. Layer up top, that's just a rectangle with the same effects basically, and a texture to go over top of that. And then a black bar, same effects as before. And that is to put our basically title text on. As you can see, you don't want all the text to be the same size. His name is the biggest, most important thing, I would say. This is probably the next most important thing, and I'd say your eyes will probably go there next, if not first, because it's at the top of the graphic. This is what you like really want people to see: preseason All-America, and then like candidate, because it's an App State graphic. We want to highlight this part and like not too much this part, so we just kind of put that down low and put in a lot smaller weight, and then you have all the statistics right there to go with it. The lighting effect of like the shading on the bottom left, lighting on the top right, I didn't want that to be too strong on this one. And then I just used a full yellow layer, set to linear dodge add, and just brushed that in where I wanted some extra like yellow lighting. So like basically mainly down here on him, and then kind of over here to really sell the fact that he's like in this yellow light. And then we use a selective color to make it all pop, kind of make the yellows a little more like on the orange red side versus the green side. Then we use the apply image technique and put that on 50%, and that's set to normal. Did the same thing again. This one's set to screen, put a little blur on it, and then just brush that in to really make certain areas pop. And I think like if you look at that area, this area, it just really sells it and like makes it look really nice, I think. All in all, I think this is a pretty nice graphic visually. Even though we have a lot of text and a lot of things in the graphic, it doesn't look too cluttered. It's still like a really sick graphic, as well as being informative. So it's kind of the best of all worlds. I hope you learned something. Thanks for watching.